Good afternoon, everyone. This is my Australian Grand Prix 2015 race report. Um, I thought it was quite a boring race, to be honest. I've been a Formula One fan since 2007, and I've pretty much watched every race since, with the notable exception of the Korean Grand Prix 2013, I think, which I just found so boring. And when it comes processional, I think even the most fanatical F1 fan does become a bit switched off, and I think it was slightly the same in Australia. It was a good race, it was interesting, but the fact that there were only 11 cars running at the end did make you think. It almost felt like winter testing, to be honest, still, because I didn't get the sense that any of the drivers were really competing, because obviously the race win was a foregone conclusion with the Mercedes. I just got the impression they weren't racing particularly hard and were just sort of coasting along. I don't know if you felt the same, but certainly, with the possible 20 cars for only half the grid to sort of finish, it raises exciting questions about reliability. But obviously there are deeper issues in Formula One which just sort of have to be addressed, and it's not so much reliability in some instances, but also big funding issues in Formula One, and the FIA ruling Valtteri Bottas couldn't race because of a back injury. All these issues, and it was, I maintain I'm not going to be fussy. I watched the full race and it was interesting, but no one's going to remember that race in a year's time. It wasn't a classic. Maybe I'm asking too much, but I always got the impression that, just a bit processional, certainly a bit processional. Though it raises long-term interesting questions, namely, is Lewis going to win a third title? I'm going to put my money on the table and say I think he is, because he was better than Rosberg last year when he was only a one-time world champion. And they had double points in Abu Dhabi last year, and that was really Rosberg's only chance. So I do think Lewis, I do think he will win a third title. No disrespect to Rosberg, obviously. I think he's going to put up. I think it's going to be a big fight again this year. But overall, I think the odds are even more in favour of Lewis this year. And longer term as well, I think Ferrari have done a really great job over winter testing, and certainly they seem to be the second best car after Mercedes, with Sebastian Vettel securing third place in the race, getting a podium, which Ferrari, they did get a podium in Hungary last year, I believe, but to get it straight away in Australia is a big step forward, and the car seems an awful lot better. And I think longer term, Ferrari could be right back up there, either next year or after the next kind of big round of rule changes. Anything could happen. And I think we have to remember that when Schumacher joined Ferrari, there were a few years where he wasn't winning any championships, and then won 5 in a row. So I think Vettel could certainly, in the fullness of time, outperform Schumacher. Maybe he only needs 3 more championships. If they produce an absolutely world-beating car in a few seasons' time, who's to say? We don't know. But for the first race for Ferrari, Vettel, I think he's looking good. McLaren longer term, actually, I don't think it's a very popular view, but I think longer term McLaren are also looking pretty good, which is strange to think after one car didn't even make it to the grid in Australia and one finished outside the points. I think McLaren are in a real dip at the moment. They have their lead driver in hospital or recovering at the moment. Jensen's pretty much going to retire at the end of this year. They don't have any sponsors on the car. It's one of the slowest cars on the grid. The engine's very underdeveloped and new and slow. So all that is terrible, frankly. And we don't quite know Ron Dennis's position within sort of the management, what he's planning to do. But I do think longer term that they will have good drivers in there. They clearly have enough money without sponsors, and they will get some back in the future, I'm sure. Ron Dennis is investing a huge amount of money in more facilities, and the Honda engine, I'm sure, will come to fruition at some point, although it seems completely inadequate at the moment. People, I think, in a few years, maybe next year, a few years after, I don't know, maybe by the end of the season we'll see better results, but they'll look back and they'll think, yeah, they've come a long way. Because it is McLaren, of course. It's one of the most successful teams in Formula One, the second most successful in history. So I do have longer term good feelings about McLaren. And also Man and Marissa, it's good to see them back, and I wonder if they can make small improvements with the money they gained last year with Jules Bianchi's ninth place in the Monaco Grand Prix, which had obviously given them a lot of money for this year. So that will be interesting to see, because I'm sure they have a sensible management team now. Red Bull is also interesting because they have slipped back, it seems, this year, and I think this could be a bit of the start of a longer decline for Red Bull, because of course they have the Renault engine, which is Christian Horner said it was both worse this year than it was last year, if you can imagine, and more undrivable, less drivable. So it isn't great. Daniel Kvyat, however you pronounce his name, is an interesting prospect, and definitely Ricciardo is very good, of course, but I get the feeling that since Adrian Newey is taking a back seat on designing the cars, and certainly they have kind of slipped behind Williams and Ferrari at the start of the year at least, this season, that they could be in a longer term malaise. I think. Yeah, of course, Williams, as I said, have made slight improvements, and they had a very good car last year, and they seem to have improved it more again. I'm sure when Bottas is back in Malaysia, they'll have really good fights with Ferrari. I think there'll be some great battles this year between Bottas and Vettel, which will be interesting, because we haven't really seen that before. And I think that's pretty much my roundup.